Music genres explained. Metalcore. What is metalcore? Like emo, metalcore as a word has been used so many times to describe so many different things that it has lost all meaning. Bands that sound like this, to this, and even this, have all been called metalcore at some point. So in this video I'm going to explain the genre, clearing up any misconceptions and going over the history. Part 1. What is metalcore? Metalcore, or metallic hardcore, is a fusion genre and subgenre of hardcore, a style of punk music. At its core, metalcore is bands from the hardcore scene drawing on tropes of metal. However, metalcore does not include every style of punk metal fusion. Crossover, the earliest style of punk metal fusion, combined hardcore with thrash metal sonically and culturally. Grunge is another style, however this is different because it is in an alternative rock context rather than punk or metal. Finally, there is beatdown hardcore and rapcore. For now, we will say they are different to metalcore because they have an overt hip-hop influence, mainly in the vocal delivery. So, what are some characteristics of metalcore? One of the biggest characteristics is the prominent influence of metal. This normally manifests in 3 different ways. First, the riffs. Metal has a more melodic way of writing riffs than hardcore or punk. Second is the vocal delivery. Metalcore takes heavy influence from both black metal and death metal, utilising fry vocals and growled vocals. Finally is the presence of guitar solos. Not all metalcore bands had solos, but it was definitely considered more of a metal thing than a punk thing at the time. Next, I'll talk about the characteristics of hardcore. First is a chuggy sound. While thrash metal utilised palm muting before hardcore, the way metalcore bands utilised it, they created a sound that was heavy and tough sounding. Second are breakdowns. While breakdowns are a part of metal as well, they originated in hardcore before they became a common metal trope. Finally is more politically minded lyrics. This means bands didn't just talk about zombies or wizards or D&D stuff, but personal issues, animal rights, organised religion, etc.
You come to me with salvation, saying I must repent. You overrun me.
Part 2. The origins of metalcore. In 1989, both Integrity and Rorschach would release their first demos. These bands can both be seen as the first metalcore bands taking hardcore to a more metal place than it had ever been before. However, it would be with Integrity's album, Those Who Fear Tomorrow, that the sound was spread. As one user on Reddit put, Integrity, compared to what was going on at the time, there is a seismic shift after they get going. I can't remember who is basically saying Integrity killed Youth Crew. This album combined the groove of hardcore with the solos and riffing of metal to create something that had the best of both worlds. It had those moshy, chuggy riffs from hardcore with fast sections that felt tight and solos similar to Metallica. As well, it had much better production than anything in hardcore at the time. The next landmark for this new sound would be the 1-2 punch of Firestorm by Earth Crisis in 1993 and then their album Destroy the Machines in 1995. Firestorm was the moment when the hardcore scene collectively went, okay, that's what we're going to do, utilising crisp production for a self-release while also starting the vegan straight edge boom of the 90s. After that, they would release their debut album Destroy the Machines. This was equally as important and arguably more influential, as it proved that the band were way ahead of their contemporaries. During this time period, New York would begin to develop a scene of their own, with the most important bands being Marauder, All Out War and Sons of Abraham. However, one band would rise above the rest, making it onto large tours such as Ozfest and support slots for metal acts such as Pantera. This band is VOD, or Vision and Disorder, who would mix a hardcore groove with clean and screamed vocals. Later, the band Poison the Well would take this style and sound to the edges of the mainstream, managing to get some play on MTV. Then it would directly or indirectly spread all across the metal scene in the 2000s. Elsewhere on the East Coast and parts of the West Coast, another style of hardcore would begin to develop parallel to metalcore. This genre is called mathcore and combines post-hardcore, math rock and metalcore. The first band of this style was Rorschach, with their final album before disbanding, Protestant. However, the two bands that turn it into a defined genre would be Converge from Boston and Dead Guy from New Jersey. Other bands important to this style's development include Botch from Seattle and the Dillinger Escape Plan. The last batch of bands I want to talk about were going to call proto-deathcore. These would be bands like Death Suffering from North Carolina, Abnegation from Pennsylvania, 18 Visions from California, Reprisal from Italy, Archangel from Belgium, and Undying, formed by some ex-Death Suffering members. These bands showed a growing shift in the scene at the time, as the primary influences moved away from Slayer and Pantera and more towards Morbid Angel and At the Gates. The bands I mentioned before introduced faster blast beats and more melodic guitars, with the breakdowns and radical lyrics of Earth Crisis and All Out War. Before I finish the video, I have two things to say. First is that I made a Spotify playlist of some of my favourite metalcore songs from the 90s, as that's what this video mainly focuses on. And second is that I have an Instagram. You can see the profile here. Follow me if you haven't already. I'll probably follow you back.